Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Such a joy to say that to you. And this is the time of year where I think many of us get into the realm of resolutions, where it's like, what do I want to change here? We get really focused on change. Out with the old, in with the new, all of these sorts of ideas. Sometimes it's like, I want to spend more time with family. I want to spend more time on blah, a hobby or something like that. Sometimes it's, I want to lose things. I want to lose weight. I want to get fit. I want to quit smoking or drinking. I want to learn a new hobby, a new skill set, and get a better education, get a new job, handle my money better, reduce the stress in my life or in my workplace, volunteer more. All of these are very worthwhile endeavors. These are also, by the way, like some of the most common resolutions. When I went looking for them online, these are the things that people often say, this is what I want to do. And I, as you may know, have a bit of an aversion around basing our life around what we just want to do, as opposed to figuring out how we want to be. When we figure our life around just the goals that we need to set, I need to cut these things out, I need to lose this much weight, whatever it is, we either get that, all of a sudden we say, oh, I want to lose 5 pounds, and we lose 5 pounds. We say, I want it to be 7. I want it to be 10. We sort of keep changing the markers. Or we don't get that, and we get really disappointed that we didn't get to 5 pounds, right? We feel bad about ourselves. So it's like with these very set fixed expectations of what we need to hit or what we need to do, there's going to be a lot of room for heartbreak, a lot of room for disappointment. And what we're going to focus on today is not just what we're going to do, but how can we show up better for ourselves and others from a place of meaning? Like, what is personally meaningful underneath the doing? How do we want to be? So meditation is, of course, in essence, the way that we can train in being. When we meditate on the breath, for example, we're not meditating and creating new breath. We're not going to change the breath or fix the breath. We're just resting with the breath that's happening. We're being with the breath. We're not doing the breath, right? So there's a distinction there. So we're learning new ways of being, new ways of relating to ourselves. And as we notice the mind act up, we might notice even what aspects of our life we want to cultivate and which aspects we might want to cut out. So maybe we're sitting there and we're meditating and everything's wonderful and peaceful and we're with the breath and we say, I should call my mom. We come back to the breath. I it would be really good if I called my mom. Come back to the breath. After the 50th time, we might say, when we get up from the meditation cushion, maybe I'll go ahead and do that, right? We might say, this is something I want to do. Like it just keeps arising. So the activity starts to naturally arise out of the ways of being. By being present and noticing what's going on in our mind, we say, oh, there are certain elements here that I want to pursue. Similarly, we might get really frustrated with this person in our mind over and over again. And then we say, oh, I don't want to have such a ongoing relationship with them. Maybe I need some boundaries around this person. Same thing. We might then have discovered something about ourselves because we've been training the mind to just be present. So naturally, there will be activity that arises out of this, but I want us to focus our attention primarily on the ways of being, and then the activity can follow, okay? A lot of this comes down to, can we actually examine our motivation behind the doing? So if we are saying, I want to lose weight, why do we want to lose weight? Is it so we feel healthy in our body? Is it so that we're more attractive to a loved one or to potential mates? What's the motivation behind it? Right? These are perfectly worthwhile things. And I certainly would not judge anyone either way for any of those answers. It's really based in what is going on behind the scenes for you. That's the interesting thing here. That's the thing that we want to get familiar with in this particular session. So another way to think about this is what is the force for change behind these resolutions that we might be making? We have to look at all the forces in our daily life that affect our ability, in this case to be healthy, or it might be our family, our work situation, etc. So we're going to actually look at all of the various parts as well. We're not just going to be Pollyanna about this and just be I'm going to be loving this year, and then just be okay, cool, that's fine. We're going to break down how does this actually, what are the support structures, how does this show up? How does this manifest in the coming year? So that we can make our force for change, so to speak, the heart of what we want to be and what we want to do. And I want to introduce a concept here, and you might even want to grab a pen and a piece of paper. And I think that's probably the only materials you're going to need for this whole session, other than something to sit on so that we can actually meditate, maybe even something to rest your paper on if that's You don't want to write on the floor or something like that. And while you grab those things, I want to talk a little bit about the idea of a mandala. There's many ways that mandalas can be viewed, and there's many mandalas out there. Like if you just typed mandala into Google and you clicked on images or something, you'd see all these different versions of. Often the thing that they have in common is that there's a being or a deity in the center, and then there's lots of circles around them, concentric circles. And in each of those concentric circles, there are either representations of that deity or beings that are associated with that deity or being aspects of the way that that played out. One of my favorite ones, if you want to look it up, is the Wheel of Life mandala, because in the center it says, okay, here's passion, aggression, ignorance. Here's the root causes of our suffering at the center. And then the next layer, there's all these and here's how suffering manifests. It manifests in us being reborn in the six realms. It manifests in the ways that we form our egoic identity. It manifests. There's so much to unpack there. Maybe someday we can even do that. But for today, I just sort of wanted to mention, there's something at the center, and then there's the effects of that thing as it grows larger and larger. For a deity or lineage figure, if they're at the center, eventually it even affects all beings. It's just all beings get represented in many of these. So the question that we're going to pose for ourselves today is, we all have mandalas. We have a mandala and a way of working with our life. What is at the center of our personal mandala? That is the question. What's at the center of our personal mandala? The Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, wrote about this, and he said, what's at the center of your mandala actually will determine how your whole life flows. He said, quote, if career is at the center of your mandala, then everything you do is going to be influenced by your wanting to get ahead in your career, unquote. Right? And we've seen that. Maybe I even had a time when I was starting Mindful the Meditation Studios. I remember having a very real talk where my wife said, it seems like the priority here is the business right now. And it sort of took me back, and I said, oh gosh, I guess you're right. For this period of time, that's the thing that I viewed I was living, breathing, sleeping, eating, all of this for Mindful. It was just getting it going, right? Launching the business. And that was the center of my model. And so when I would run into friends, and I say run into because I didn't actually take much time off of work, they would say, how are things going? And I'd just talk to them about Mindful. With my family, and I would get together, how are things going? I would just talk about that, right? So there's some sense of everything gets filtered through that thing that's at the center of the mandala. Later on, after a period of time, I sort of had to look directly at that and say, I don't want that to be the case. I don't want the work issue or the work project or whatever it is to be the center of my mandala. It's very easy for us to fall into something like that, to put work or a family issue at the center of who we are, as opposed to things that we would like to intentionally place there. So we might fall into some bad habits here, but now we're going to take a moment to just consider, what is the center of my personal mandala? If you had to answer it right now, what would you say has been happening in the last year? What took up the center of it? What influenced all these other aspects of your life, your social life, your family life, whatever it might be? So again, no one will know the answer to this but you you may love that answer, you may not. Either is fine. We're going to, now that it's the beginning of a new year, we're going to reset, and we're going to look at an intentional motivation that we would like to bring into the center of our mandala. It's something that, a guiding principle, we could say, a force for change that we would like to have bear fruit over the course of the year. It could be a big idea. It could be very vague. It could be, I want to help others. It could be, I want to be healthy again. It could be mindfulness. It could be love. It could be any of these things. And everything will flow from that. So why don't we do a little bit of meditation here, and I'll just guide us through every step of the way. So you can place your pen and pencil or pen on the ground. If you've been sort of sitting here really diligently waiting to use it, set it aside just for a moment. And you can take your good meditation posture. And we've gone over the good meditation posture in other videos here. So I'm just going to briefly touch on feeling our sit bones down through the floor or our legs on the ground. The gentle lift of the spine. And when you're ready, come into just feeling the body breathing, noticing the in-breath and the out-breath as it moves through you. Noticing when a lot of thoughts come up. For this moment in time, we're just going to acknowledge them, come back to the body breathing. Just ask yourself a question in this moment. What qualities would I like to cultivate this year? And this is not an intellectual exercise. It's actually just listening to our gut, our intuition, our wisdom mind, however you'd like to talk about it. But there's some intuitive awareness that happens. Just ask ourselves the question and notice what answers come up. What qualities would I like to cultivate this year? You might notice that one answer keeps coming up, or it might be several different answers. Either is fine. Just take a moment here to really look, to explore what qualities would I like to cultivate this year? Now it's a moment of transition. I'd like to invite you to pick up that piece of paper and that pen. And in the bottom right hand corner, just write down a few that have really felt most relevant to you in this short contemplation. Okay, now we get creative. In the center of your piece of paper, draw a circle about yay big. Doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be giant. It's going to have one word in it. But then draw another circle around it. And then another. And then another. And one or two more. And at this point, you can take as long or as little for these steps as you would like, but I'm going to go through them, and you can pause the video along the way, or you can somehow magically keep up with me, but I'll speak somewhat slowly. I want you to look at that list of these qualities. Love, generosity, patience, whatever it might be, whatever is right there. And as you look at them, notice if one particularly stands out. One feels most significant or important to you today. What I would like you to do is to write that one word or that short phrase in that center circle. What you drew just now was a mandala, and it's the mandala of your life. And we are purposely saying this quality that I want to cultivate, I'm putting it at the center of my mandala. So instead of making everything around work or around my new romantic relationship or whatever it is, it's this quality. The next step is very juicy. You are going to write out various aspects of your life in the mandala. And the closer they are to who you are and what you do every day, put them towards the center. And if there are parts of your life that you don't currently engage in very much, you can put them a little bit further out, and things that you maybe want to have involved, but maybe it's friends that you see once a year or something like that. Maybe that goes a little bit further on the periphery. And just take a few moments now to really map out various parts of your life. And the reason I say it's juicy is because you may sit there and say, my relationship with my friends. And all of a sudden you say, ooh, I haven't talked to a bunch of these people in months. And you might say, well, okay, maybe that's more like a couple circles out as opposed to my first circle. Right? We're just saying whatever we spend the most time and parts of our attention on, they get closer into the center of the circle. Things that we do not spend. If we say, I'm an avid reader, but we've only read one book in the last year, maybe that goes a little bit towards the outside and we're just honest with ourselves. And that's just where it is right now. That's okay. So these things that you are writing down in these outer circles, beyond that center circle, they could be people. It could be your relationship to certain family members, romantic partner, close friends, further out friends, casual acquaintances, coworkers that you have in your life you see regularly. You could put them all in different circles or all in the same circle, whatever you'd like. It can be hobbies like reading and like, certain physical disciplines. It can be writing. It can be any creative endeavors, artistic endeavors, painting, whatever you might do, you knit, you put it in there, right? That's the idea. You put it somewhere in one of these circles. It can be big events in your life, things that you plan around. Maybe you and some friends all get together for your collective birthday every year, and that's just something that you always do, and it goes there. It goes in somewhere. So we really get quite expansive. Our activities, the people in our life, the traditions. You go to the museum a lot, put the museum in. Like all of these sorts of things. Our volunteer work, whatever you do, whatever activities and people and things are going on in your life, put it somewhere in there and be honest with yourself about where it belongs. Once you've fully mapped out the mandala with lots of different parts of your life, you can do a much simpler step, which is to draw a very thin line from that center circle with that quality in it to all of those various parts. And you might want to pause and contemplate the answer to each of these things, but just looking at this center quality and looking at where that line went to. What would it look like to imbue that thing, that person, that relationship with that quality just a little more? So for example, if love was at the center of my mandala, and I was looking at the name of my friend, Nancy, I would look at that and I'd say, well, I could tell Nancy that I love her more. I could actually just go out and say it, I love you, friend. And I could text her once a week just to check in. It can be something very simple. So we have this thing at the center. This is our way of being, the quality that we want to focus our attention on. This is who I want to, one of the qualities I want to embody in the coming year. Love, peace, prosperity, whatever your thing is. How does it relate to other people? How does it relate, by the way, if you haven't included things about yourself and like your own well-being and self-care, yoga, your diet, your relationship to exercise, whatever it is, those probably belong on your mandala as well. And you can map out, what does it mean to even do that? What is the form of love that goes into our exercise routine? Well, it means that I actually listen to my body more. Well, maybe it could be that simple, right? But there's something that's like, oh, I'm going to let the quality dictate the activity as opposed to the other way around. So you can take some time for that and ultimately map out for as little, again, or as long as you would like to contemplate how to imbue all of these aspects of your life with this quality that you want to cultivate in the coming year. Wonderful. So this is the primary exercise, and of course I'm fond of including a lot of Lojong, mind training slogans in these teachings. So I wanted to just reflect on two of the mind training slogans that were developed by a Buddhist gentleman known as Atisha several hundred years ago. He'd been studying the Buddhist teachings for quite some time and teaching, and he said, I want to make them really accessible to people. And so he developed 59 mind training slogans that can help us remember some of the teachings. So we might forget about this, what was step 7 of this at mandala exercise? That's fine, right? That's okay. But could we remember very pith slogans, such as one of them today, all dharmas agree at one point. And these things might actually help remind us to come back into the present moment and maybe even remind us of the qualities that we want to cultivate. So we are covering some of the transcendental actions that relate to meditative concentration, ways that we can manifest our meditation mind. And one of these slogans is actually number 19 out of the 59. All dharmas agree at one point. So Atisha taught this slogan with the idea, essentially what the Buddha, these are the teachings of the Buddha, right? So what the Buddha taught was suffering and the end of suffering. That's what he said. I teach suffering and the end of suffering. That's it. So this is where all the points meet. That ultimately what we're doing, even in the exercise that we just engaged in, is looking at our suffering, looking at the ways that we get lost in some of the weeds of our daily activity and trying to yank ourselves out and not get so lost in the stress and anxiety of the day, the forms of suffering that we might actually encounter. Can we actually move towards the end of suffering, which would actually be us waking up to our true nature, our own sense of awake, our own wakefulness? And in particular, this slogan talks about the subjugation of ego, of like me holding on to my fixed ideas of who I am and what I need to do. And this sort of exercise can even challenge that. In some of the foundational teachings of Buddhism, some of the foundational vehicle teachings, the idea here is that all phenomena, all dharmas, so dharma is plural, is actually refers to everything, all phenomena, everything. All dharmas agree at one point, the point of ending suffering, right? But from the foundational vehicle perspective, the idea here is that we're cutting through the discursive mind every time we sit down to meditate and expanding our awareness so that we're actually just less self-centered. Even as you're drawing the mandala, you might notice, oh, like this is me showing up differently for other people, which brings us into what's known as the Mahayana or greater vehicle, where it's more about opening up to other beings so that we're not so fixated just on me and myself. So these are the ideas behind this particular slogan of all dharmas agree at one point. So when we're focused not just on me and my thing, but also on how we show up more fully for whatever's right in front of us, we're living an authentic life. We actually are, having an authentic year because we're basing our year in the true qualities that we possess. whatever those qualities may be, peace, love, etc. And then the second slogan is the one that follows it, which is the 20th slogan out of the 59. And the teacher wrote, of the two witnesses, hold the principal one. And you might have a gut sense of what that means, but it's the idea that there are two witnesses to any given action. One, our view of our activity, and two, someone else's view of our activity, right? We have other people's view, and we have our own view. And the principal witness refers to our own view, our own insight. So, if someone happened to come across your mandala drawing and say, oh, it looks like you're not close with your parents at all, or something like that, that's fine, right? Like there's some sense of like, well, they don't understand the full picture here. You do. You understand yourself better than anyone. So there might be some projections here of like, this person is like this, or they shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z, or whatever is going on in your life. But Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who I quoted before, he's once said, quote, the practice of the slogan is always to be true to yourself. You are the only person who knows yourself, unquote. So there is some sense of being authentic with who we are and our understanding of who we are, and realizing that we are always going to be the best witness and also the best cheerleader and also the best doer when it comes to actually embodying the teachings and embodying the practices in ways that we feel good about. That other people might have their own fixed ideas of what you should or should not be doing, and that's okay. That's them. But you are the principal witness here. The idea here is that you yourself know all your flaws, you know where you fall down on the job of mindfulness and compassion. And other people can offer their subjective ideas about that, but you're the only one who knows for sure. When we engage our mind in these sorts of contemplations, whether it's the mandala exercise or working with these slogans, we might ultimately find a sense of contentment arise. Contentment, coming out of the Buddhist tradition, contentment is the idea of it exists in being, not doing. So to come full circle here, what we've been focusing our attention on really is, can I tune into ways of being, and can I let those ways of being influence my activity? The more present we are in our day-to-day life, the more we are able to skillfully see which activities and people we ought to spend more time on and in what ways, and which we might need to cut out or have more boundaries around. So the beauty of this process is that no matter what we do, whether we're working and we're a garbage collector or a hedge fund manager, whatever, whether we are in line at the supermarket or we are driving our car to work, we are still the being that we want to be. So whatever we're doing, we can actually show up and cultivate these qualities that we've been turning our mind to today. You are determining who you want to be and what qualities you want to cultivate. Not letting your specific job or specific calls for attention that come your way dictate who you are. You get to define who you are in this new year. So thank you for your attention, and I hope the exercise has been helpful. And I look forward to connecting with you very soon.